Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai. Jai Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Vihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha
Jaya Girivardhari
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Brajasaranjana
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Brajasaranjana
Munatira Vajari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Vajari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Valadya Jaya Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajasaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namaram Jaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye Nashtakayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Taktir Bhakti Naikshiki. Hare Krishna. Such a pleasure to be with all of you. We're reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 6, verse 33. So we're just a few verses from the end of the chapter. It ends on 38. What I'll do is I'll read the Sanskrit and translation for these verses. And one verse in particular, let me see, I think it's 35. 34. I'll read the purport to 34, and then we'll speak and have a little discussion. 1633. Sri Narada is speaking. Pragaita svaviryani tirtapadav priyashra ahut ivame shikhram darshanam yati chetasi. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, whose glories and activities are pleasing to hear, bless you, whose glories and activities are pleasing to hear, at once appears on the seat of my heart, as if called for, as soon as I begin to chant his holy activities. 34. Etadhyatra chittanam matra sparshitchaya muhu bhavasantu plavo drushto haricharyam varnanam. Now I'm going to read the purport to 36. This translation, though, is, it is personally experienced by me that those who are always full of cares and anxieties, due to desiring contact of the senses with their objects, can cross the ocean of nescience on a most suitable boat, the constant chanting of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. 35. Yamadipir yoga patai kamalopa hato muhu mukunda sevaya yadvat vitatmadha nashangyati. It is true that by practicing restraint of the senses by the yoga system, one can get relief from the disturbances of desire and lust, but this is not sufficient to give satisfaction to the soul. For this, satisfaction, is derived from devotional service to the personality of Godhead. 36. Should I read the word for word? Is that a thing that we do as well?
It's okay. I mean, it's up to you.
Okay.
Established.
Sarvam taridam akya kangat prushtoham tvayanaka janma karma rahasyam me bhavataschatmatoshanam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. O Vyasadeva, you are freed from all sins. Thus I have explained my birth and activities for self-realization, as you asked. All this will be conducive for your personal satisfaction also. Purport. The process of devotional activities from the beginning to the stage of transcendence is all duly explained to satisfy the inquiries of Vyasadeva. He has explained how the seeds of devotional service were sown by transcendental association and how they gradually developed by hearing the sages. The result of such hearing is detachment from worldliness, so much so that even a small boy could receive the death news of his mother, who was his only caretaker, as the blessing of God. And at once he took the opportunity to search out the Lord. A sincere urge for having an interview with the Lord was also granted to him, although it is not possible for anyone to see the Lord with mundane eyes. He also explained how by execution of pure transcendental service one can get rid of the fruit of action, of accumulated work, and how he transformed his material body into a spiritual one. The spiritual body is alone able to enter into the spiritual realm of the Lord, and no one but a pure devotee is eligible to enter into the kingdom of God. All the mysteries of transcendental realization are duly experienced by Narada Muni himself, and therefore by hearing such an authority one can have some idea of the results of devotional life, which are hardly delineated even in the original texts of the Vedas. In the Vedas and Upanishads there are only indirect hints to all this. Nothing is directly explained there, and therefore Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature fruit of all the Vedic trees of literatures. I'll finish the chapter. Verse 38. Suduvacha evam sambhashya bhagavan narado vashavi sutam vasavi sutam atma amantriya vinam ranayan yaya yadrichiko munihi. Suta Goswami, thus addressing Vyasadeva, Suta Goswami said, thus addressing Vyasadeva, Srila Narada Muni took leave of him, and vibrating on his Veena instrument, he left to wander at his free will. In the last verse of the chapter, Baho devarshir dhanyo yang yat kirtan shangat hanvanaha gayan madyan idang tantriya ramayatyat jagat. All glory and success to Srila Narada Muni, because he glorifies the activities of the personality of Godhead, and so doing, he himself takes pleasure and also enlivens all the distressed souls of the universe. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the first canto, 6th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Conversation between Narada and Vyasadeva. Jai. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shirakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshaya Putre Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Pachaki Deshanane Vanchakalpatarupyascha Kripasindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
So, as I started by saying, I'm really happy to be here, really grateful when Prabhu asked me last night, and I realized that it was possible. I was very happy because the Bhagavatam is always purifying, but I was also eager to be in this space and experience that the feeling of the devotees here, the service that's happening here is super important. It's an incredibly important city, and you're all doing such, I've heard such wonderful things, and it's just great to be here. So please accept my humble obeisances. And it's a beautiful full circle because I was mentioning we met in the Govardhan Eco Village in 2015. And Peru was studying the Bhagavatam very intensely there. I was a wandering brahmachari, and I got to stay there for a couple of days. And anywhere the Bhagavatam is being recited becomes like home. So I was going to speak especially on this principle that we saw in the 36th verse. Narada says, all this that I've explained about my life, or his previous life, and his attainment of a spiritual body will be conducive for your personal satisfaction also, right? Because the whole conversation, chapter 5 and chapter 6 is precipitated by Vyasadeva's despondency. He's actually, it's incredible actually, if you think about the situation. Vyasadeva is a Shakti-Avesh avatar. He's not like you or I. He doesn't have any, attachment to matter. At least for myself, I can say I'm a conditioned soul. But even he, in the course of his service, there's a little bit of like a course correction, what to speak of for us. So there's some way in which the guru is coming and offering some guidance. And specifically what I want to bring out is that this whole discussion, Narada Muni talking about how, as Prabhupada puts it, he hears, he has some transcendental association, leads to hearing, right? That hearing purifies his heart. Nashta prayeshu apadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. He served those devotees, and he served the Bhagavatam vibration. And by that, his heart gets so purified that when his mother suddenly is bit by a snake, he has this human experience. I mean, that's pretty shocking, especially for anybody, but especially for a young child. But he sees it in relationship to what he had heard, that there's a reason for this. What is the lesson? There's something happening here. This is not just an opportunity to dive into the ever-present opportunity to dive into like drama, right? That's always there in the material world. There's always some drama. You don't have to have your mother just get bit by a snake for there to be drama. There's always some opportunity. Am I right? It's not just me. There's always some like, oh my God, have you heard the latest news? And there's some drama, because that's the way the world is. There's always something that you can get entangled in. And by hearing from those who had a taste, he actually developed the opportunity to take a different perspective, not get lost in that drama, right? He could have been any number of, like any number of orphan children. He just takes on some story. But instead he's like, okay, let me go look, let me travel, let me find this Lord I've heard about. And the next thing that Prabhupada mentions is that a sincere urge for having an interview with the Lord was also granted to him. So he takes the opportunity to look for the Lord, and he has this desire, this strong desire to see him. What did George Harrison say? I really want to see you, Lord, but it takes so long. This is actually a blessing. It's a blessing to want to see Krishna. So he had that. When did he have that? He has this opportunity of chanting the mantras that are given to him. Krishna appears to him and transcendently enlivens all his senses, right? And he feels, as I think I can say with conviction, we've all felt at some time that this is real, this process works. Krishna is real and he's reciprocating. He felt that perfectly. And then Krishna withdraws. Why? To give this sincere urge to have his association. Krishna says, you're not ready yet. You won't even have me in this life, but if you keep practicing strictly and sincerely, you'll be mine and I'll be yours. So he gives him this urge to have his association again. And this is quite relatable because we can also experience in our own practice. There may be at some point at which we actually feel like, oh, wow, this process, like I'm actually tasting this. And then Krishna kind of withdraws a little bit to give that urge. Oh, Krishna, come back. Where are you? You know, there's something so mysteriously attractive in this holy name, but I'm so unfortunate that I cannot even taste a drop of it. Krishna will withdraw himself just to make us chase a little bit, to give this desire for him, because that's what gets us through the years. Narad Muni then discussed how he spent the rest of his life, he ran out that clock on that life from the age of 5, from that darshan he had in some grove somewhere in the middle of Bharatavarsha. He spends the rest of his life practicing humbly and sincerely. And then he attains the spiritual body. And he also explains how this transcendental service gets rid of all the material affection, gets rid of the material body, allows one to enter the spiritual realm, because he's in a spiritual body at this point. He's talking about his next life. In the next Kalpa, he appears along with Brahma in that spiritual body of Narada Muni. So what is the point I'm trying to make is that there's this process, and I basically delineated it as he did. However, what's really interesting to me is that the process is expressed by a person, right? Sri Vyasadeva, he has a situation. And as Albert Einstein puts it, you cannot solve a problem on the same level that caused it, right? You can't solve a problem from the same place that you currently are. You actually have to be higher, which is a contradiction, because how can you be higher than where you are? You can't. You have to have somebody lift you. This is actually the reality of life. We're always in relationship to other people. From the beginning of life, we're completely in relationship. First of all, we're in relationship to matter, because even to breathe requires this complex apparatus. Just to function in a material body in this environment requires so much support from the material nature. We need all that. That means like just endless affection and care and attention from living entities, so we can actually start to walk on our own 2 feet, literally and figuratively, right? And then to come to a higher level spiritually requires that somebody from that level extend themselves. Therefore, the verse says, all this about my life will be conducive for your personal satisfaction also. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya means serving the Bhagavatam, but it also means serving the devotees, because they're not different. We can't actually come to that higher level without hearing from devotees. And the Bhagavatam itself is full of conversations like this, so that we get the idea that this is a personal process. It's not just a matter of retreating and studying. That's very good. I remember in my brahmachari time, the great privilege that I experienced is the privilege of, I'm allowed to just study the Bhagavatam. I'm allowed to just read these books. That's wonderful. And the other blessing that was less apparent to me, because it's not so much in my nature, was the blessing of living with devotees and just being able to transcend my conditioning, their conditioning, look past it and see how we're here as a family serving Krishna together and growing because of that. So there's this principle of, in the association of devotees, hearing this transcendental sound vibration, even with our peers, what to speak of with those who are on a higher level than us, we actually have the path laid out for us. And it's necessary to have that. There's a certain special way in which, when you hear from somebody who has experienced something that you have not, and your heart is open to them, and they're extending themselves to you, then you make this ineffable kind of progress, right? Just by hearing from them, just by saying, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know the answers to these questions I have. Will you please help me? What was it like for you, right? And they extend themselves. Well, actually, when I was your age, little Jimmy, this, that, the other. And the next thing you know, you're growing. So that's our whole that's our whole process. That's our whole movement. Srila Prabhupada, he mentions in the Nectar of Instruction, verse 4, I think it's verse 4, Tadati pratigripnati, gohyam akhyati prichati, bhakti bhojayate chaiva sharvitam priti lakshan. There's these 6 loving exchanges, right? There's giving and receiving gifts, giving and receiving prasad, and opening your heart in confidence, and receiving in confidence the contents of someone else's heart. He says in that purport, to facilitate these 6 loving exchanges is the purpose for which we've established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And somebody could say, like, how is that? I thought this international society is for sharing Krishna consciousness. In other words, there can be no sharing of Krishna consciousness without these 6 loving exchanges. There can be no receiving and growing unless there is somebody who is extending themselves. There has to be this conversation. That's what Vyasadeva has. That's what Sutta, Shukadev, Parikshit, that's what they all have. Even if you're already perfect, we see with devotees like Shukadev Goswami, they're eager to relish the opportunity to discuss and share more. Jiva Goswami mentions in his Sandarbhas that even advanced devotees, if they have the opportunity, would prefer to churn the nectar of Krishna's glories with other devotees if they can. Mm-hmm. Even perfect devotees will do that. And the Bhagavatam is the evidence of that. All over the Bhagavatam, Uddhava, Maitreya, you name it. They're all just like asking Vidura. They're asking questions as if they don't know the answers, just to hear more. Because every living entity actually has a unique perspective on Krishna. And to hear from them, particularly one who's trying to practice bhakti, is very enlivening. And this comes to the point of hearing even from your peers, right? Because as Sanatana Goswami mentions in his purport to a verse in the 10th canto of chapter 14, wherein Brahma says that, the verse number, so I won't guess. He says that the scientists, great mentally, acute persons may come to a point one day where they can count all the particles of sun, all the particles of sand, all the light particles, right? They may actually be able to count these gigantic, practically uncountable numbers if they get experts enough, but they will never come to a point of counting all your qualities, Krishna. Brahma, he's realized that in this point in the prayers, he's had his heart very much humbled. Krishna stole all the cows. This whole thing happened. Brahma, the most intelligent person, saying, they may count all these little particles on the carpet. They may count all the tiny particles of air in this room. One day they may measure that, but they can never measure all your glories. And in the purport, Sanatana Goswami says, Krishna, he manifests unlimited qualities for his unlimited parts and parcels, by which they may have a unique understanding and relationship with him. He's like a jewel, and that jewel has an infinite number of facets, and everyone is looking at it from a certain perspective. If you remember, Krishna is there having lunch with his friends. What happened? They're all looking at him at the same time. He's in the middle. Nobody is deprived of that because he's Krishna. He can do that. So every living entity has this unique perspective on the infinite Lord. So even hearing from peers, therefore, is actually a very enlivening experience. And we see the most realized devotees, according to Jiva Goswami, like I just said, will do that. Because what? Because this person here can see my Lord in a way I can never see until I hear from them. What to speak of for an advancing or hopefully advancing sadhaka, we have to hear from other people. So there's this beautiful principle that whatever was conducive for Narada's advancement will be conducive for Vyasadeva's advancement. And so yesterday we were spending some time with Mother Kanka and her husband, we affectionately called Uncle Bob, and their little space. And Uncle Bob likes to carve out these trails. He's a trailblazer, literally. He establishes trails in the redwood forest there. And there's one that she called the Swami Trail because His Holiness Radhanath Swami and His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu walked it together and with them. And so we were walking this trail with the two of them. And as much as I could, I was inquiring when I could catch my breath. Mother Kanka, would you tell us about your experiences with Srila Prabhupada? Would you tell us about our Guru Maharajas and what they were like when they were younger? Would you tell us about your experiences in bhakti? And just prodding and encouraging her to speak, because whatever she was saying was very enlivening, right? It was very, very eye-opening. And I was just saying on the ride down here this morning, I would love to go back and spend more time with them and spend another few hours just hearing whatever she wants to say. because it may seem very mundane from a certain point of view, the things that we've experienced, but actually just speaking it to somebody whose heart is open will allow them to experience it themselves, which is a tremendous time saver. You can actually skip so many lifetimes just by hearing. So Narada Muni is taking pity, expressing compassion upon Vyasadeva by going out of his way to express his whole life story, previous life story. This is what it was like for me. I was just a boy. I didn't even have an education. I didn't even know who my father is, apparently. We don't hear anything about his father. Single mother household, right? And I had this great opportunity of serving devotees. All these different things happened. We talked about his whole life. And therefore, Vyasadeva, you should be more direct about your preaching. This is why you're not happy, because you're not being direct enough, right? That was his particular situation. He has a service of like presenting all these different shastras, but his heart is not satisfied. Why? Well, Guru Maharaj explained to me, yeah, no, I actually have to give them Krishna directly because this is what makes the difference. How do I know? Because it brought my Guru Maharaj to where he is. So this is a value of actually opening your heart. It's an interesting dynamic because the impersonalists will say, why are you devotees talking so much? This is very proud. You should be humble. You shouldn't talk so much, right? They stay like that. And Sanatana Goswami says in his Brihad Bhagavatamrita that through the person of Gopakumar, he has this experience in the first part of that Shastra where he actually becomes a perfect devotee through a whole long process, going from loka to loka to loka, different strata of the material world and spiritual world, different strata of consciousness, different ways of associating with the modes of nature, and the different ways of associating with Krishna. He comes finally to Goloka Vrindavan. Now, the point where he says what I'm about to tell you, he has been personally contacted by Srimati Radharani herself, who says that there is a Brahmana nearby who is a very sincere devotee but has lost his way and doesn't know what to do next. I want you to help him. So he converses with this Brahman. And Gopakumar says, normally, to speak about and glorify oneself is as good as death. But if it helps somebody else to advance in bhakti, one must do it. So that's the perspective of an advanced Vaishnava. This is why Srila Prabhupada came to all of us. And this is our answer to the Mayavadis, is that we're not talking nonsense. We're not glorifying ourselves. We're glorifying Krishna when we talk about our journey, actually. It's actually a very service-oriented thing to say what Narada Muni is saying, to say even what Srila Prabhupada would say in his classes. Srila Prabhupada would talk about how, my spiritual master was coming to me in dreams and saying you should take sannyas. And I was horrified, he said. I was horrified. He was who he was at that time. He had his perspective, and Krishna was leading him more and more. If you think about what it was like for Srila Prabhupada coming to New York City with nobody, nothing. And Gargamuni, Brahmananda Prabhu was saying he actually bought a ticket to go back, and he went back to the station. He, of course, never went back to India at that point, but he was so alone, apparently. He was sitting with that doubt of, I know this is what my Guru Maharaj wants me to do. I know there's some mercy here, but I don't see it yet. And he just persevered. And he would express these things to his disciples. This was my experience. I tried to start the Jhansi League, it didn't work out. I tried to make the disciples in India, that didn't work out. I tried to cooperate with my god siblings, that whole thing happened. There's this whole drama with the institution. Anybody who has any institutional concerns, Prabhupada already had that. He talked about all that, and he said, but here I am, Kanka was telling us last night. She was in the room when Srila Prabhupada said, I was being asked to take sannyas, and I was horrified. And then with tears in his eyes, he was saying, I left my family, and I came to you. All of you, Krishna came and gave me all of you as my family, right? Mm-hmm. We heard that because she told us. Yeah. And she heard it because Prabhupada told her. Here's his perspective, like sitting in that doubt of, I know this is what I'm supposed to do, but like, how is it going to manifest? And for Krishna has so many plans. He's so beyond this. And because Prabhupada persevered, she heard about it. And because she's persevered, we heard about it. And so in this way, we're extending this great gift. Prabhupada finishes the purport by saying, by hearing such an authority, one could have some idea of the results of devotional life, which are hardly delineated even in the original text of the Vedas. That the supreme secret of spiritual life is contained in the heart of the devotee. It's actually contained in the heart of the devotee. And without that, it's not possible to experience. Without Prabhupada putting himself into these pages, the Bhagavatam would remain mysterious. The Bhagavad Gita, which is the great treasure of Indian spirituality, it was discovered by German and English Sanskritists and historians in the 1700s. How many lives did it change before Srila Prabhupada gave himself to Krishna's instruction that if you just teach this science, you become my most dear devotee. No one will ever be more dear than you. Before someone did that, before someone took up that service, how many lives were touched by Bhagavad Gita? Not so many, right? In the West. Because they didn't hear from a devotee. So this is the thing, is that as His Holiness Gaur Govinda Maharaj says, Bhakti, Bhakta, and Bhagavan are always intertwined. They are never separated. Anywhere there's bhakti, there's a devotee practicing bhakti. And anywhere there's a devotee practicing bhakti, Krishna is giving himself. So if you want Krishna, you have to associate with the devotee. Because these stories that I was in your place one time, and this is what happened for me. I had doubts one time. This is my dark night of the soul. This is what I went through, even if it's different than what you're going through. Just hearing that is so fortifying. It's so fortifying to hear about that. Srila Prabhupada, from each other, from the lives of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and all these great saints and acharyas, they're always sharing these things, and it's very fortifying. And in fact, it's necessary. So, how are we doing on time?
7:37.
7:37. Okay. Hare Krishna. Om Tat Sat. Well, at least pause here, because in my experience, especially given the nature of what I just said, the best part of the class is the back and forth. So we'll take some reflections, at least, and then we can go into questions. Reflections means anything you heard that you thought is interesting. It could be literally just, I heard this, and that's what I'll remember. We'll take reflections. Comments, questions also acceptable. What did you hear?
I was interested in what you said about counting all the particles. I was wondering if you could tell us the verse now.
Sure. Can I have a Canto 10, Part 2? So in the Brahma Vimohana Lila, I think you may be familiar with this pastime. Krishna steals, first Brahma steals the cows and boys away. First he steals the cows. They're all sitting down to have lunch, and the boys say, "Oh no, the cows have wandered off." And Krishna, because he's such a sweet guy, he says, "You all take your lunch. Don't get up. I'll get up. I'll be right back." And he goes to look for them, and he realizes, because he's Krishna, what happened? That Brahma's taken all these cows. And then he comes back, and the boys are gone. So what does he do? Because Brahma took all the boys too. So he remanifests himself, not as a jiva, as Vishnu Tattva. They're all directly expansions of himself. They're all God, as the cows and the boys. And for the next year, all the mother cows are in love with their calves, beyond what they've ever seen before. All the mothers and fathers in Vrindavan are completely overwhelmed by their boys. And Balaram's like, what's going on? Nobody could do this except for Krishna. So he goes to Krishna and says, what's the deal, bro? And Krishna explains this is what happened. And Brahma, he leaves. And of course, Brahma's in a higher planetary system. So from that point of view, time is passing differently. So in one moment of his time, he feels like, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have done it. Maybe I've played with fire here. And he goes back to see what happened. And in that moment, a year has passed on Vrindavan, earthly Vrindavan, right? And he realizes through a series of revelations that Krishna has tricked him back. And his own attempt to take charge of the situation was foolish. And he becomes deeply humbled, because he realizes who he's played with is his own Lord. And so this is 10:14:7. Gunatmanaste gunan vimatum itavatirnasya ka ishiresya kalina yadva imita sukalpad bhupangshavake mehikadipashaha. In time, learned philosophers or scientists might be able to count all the atoms of the earth, the particles of snow, or perhaps even the shining molecules radiating from the sun, the stars, and other luminaries. But among these learned men, who could possibly count the unlimited transcendental qualities possessed by you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who have descended onto the surface of the earth for the benefit of all living entities? And the purport, it's a nice purport. One thing that's said here, Srila Sanatana Goswami further explains that the Lord manifests a specific spiritual quality for the benefit of each living entity. Since there are innumerable living entities within the confines of the material creation, the Lord manifests infinite qualities. Thus, every conditioned soul can appreciate the Supreme Lord in a particular way. When I first read that, I was blown away. That's what I was paraphrasing. 10.14.7. This is a commentary by the servants of Srila Prabhupada, quoting Sanatana. What did you like about that it stuck out for you?
Progression of science alongside glorification of the deep love of Krishna in the heart of the devotees.
Yeah.
And how material science, although it might progress, is never going to quite be able to capture Krishna. It can't bind Krishna.
Yeah.
I mean, unless he wants to be bound, in which case, maybe you can a little bit. But I was just thinking, it's really a nice verse when thinking about progression of technology and science.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a verse to support that from the previous chapter, 1.5. It's not coming to me. It's somewhere in that chapter, but it already says the progression of poetry and science is just meant to come to the point of glorifying the Lord, right? So this is the whole point of dovetailing. And so we're not against appreciating Krishna's energy at all. The ones who can't appreciate Krishna's energy are the impersonalists. They can't actually understand. And the ones who improperly appreciate Krishna's energy are the materialists, because they take it for granted that they're the enjoyer, they're the center of the experience, they're the experiencer. Fundamental reality, I'm God. Although most people are too polite to say it. The false ego is basically like, I'm God. But devotees definitely appreciate material reality, even material reality, of course, because it comes from Krishna. And therefore they can transcend it. So there has to be beauty here. Krishna is the supreme beautiful. Whatever is beautiful here comes from him, etc. But if you actually want to understand him, then you have to take to this process that attracts his attention. Like you said, only if he wants to show himself. Turns out Krishna is only ever attracted to bhakti. No karmic ritual or exhibition of intellectual prowess will ever attract him. But a sincere offering of bhakti will make him yours.
How can we understand this alongside the idea that the universal form appears? I heard a verse something like the universal form appears for us to understand the Lord, so that, what was it? Almost like basically that it's, maybe I don't want to say it, but like I remember like an illusion, like the universal form is partially an illusion, so that we can understand the Lord. Am I hallucinating that?
That maybe in the 11th canto, something like that. So what I'll say is that, for example, in the early second canto, Shukadeva Goswami begins by discussing how, because he starts talking only in the beginning of the second canto. He begins there by saying that the yogi will start to appreciate the material world, like they'll see it as the universal form, as an expression of Krishna. This is like a step for them. The first stage in God realization is the name of that chapter. The mountains are his bones, the clouds are like his hair, and the forest trees are like the hairs on his body. And this way, they start to get a sense of the oneness of all living entities. It's coming from source. It's a way to purify the heart. And eventually they let go of that, right? As we see in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks to see Krishna's universal form. He sees it, He has a whole mind-blowing experience. And then what does he say? I want to see your Somya Vapu, your beautiful, sweet form again. This is where his heart is, because he's a devotee. He's beyond dealing with the universe. So from that sense, it's illusory in the sense that it's not sat, it's not eternal. It's sometimes manifest and sometimes not manifest, right? We don't take the perspective of the Mayavadis where we say it's not real. It's real, temporarily. It's not eternally real. In Sanskrit, sat doesn't just mean good or true, it means that which is eternally true. So from that perspective, it's not sat. The material world is asat. But it's still Krishna, right? So one who's advancing can go through this phase of like appreciating the world and yogis and oneness and the sky and all this, because it's connected to the Supreme. They go deeper, they come to Paramatma, then they come to Bhagavan, practicing bhakti. And for them, the back and forth of the world is not so important. For them, that's just a thing that's happening in the background. It's all Krishna. So that's how I would kind of harmonize that statement. There's lots of statements in the 11th canto that kind of talk about that. And I'm sure if impersonalists tried to cherry pick, they would take them out of context and say, see, it's all false. It's all illusion. But that's the harmonized understanding.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you. And the verse I was trying to find was 1.5.22. Learned circles have positively concluded that the infallible purpose of the advancement of knowledge, namely austerity, study of the Vedas, sacrifice, chanting of hymns, and charity, culminates in the transcendental descriptions of the Lord, who is defined in choice poetry. So that all this scientific advancement is not a bad thing, but it should be used to count Krishna's glories. And if you're going to try to count all the atoms in the universe, okay, good luck, but also do that as a way of glorifying. I mean, Sir Isaac Newton, we're all familiar with the name Isaac Newton, if we're not science majors, right? Why? Because his contributions to science were timeless. He was an all-time scientist. Who was Isaac Newton before he entered the science realm? He was a devotee in the Christian faith. He actually became a scientist, in his own words, to understand how God operates in the world he has created. And he creates all these theories, makes amazing progress, and he retires at the age of like 33 or something. To do what with the rest of his life? To chant hymns. He's like, that's it, I've done enough of this. Now I'm going to go back and my heart is just in this chanting process. He just becomes like a simple Christian. Because for him, science is just another way of glorifying God. This is what happened before the unnatural divorce between science and spirituality. They're actually one, they're neck and neck. They have to be, because they're both Krishna's energy. Material energy, spiritual energy. They both belong to him. You want to be a scientist? No problem. Just understand you're trying to glorify the creation, which is Krishna's creation. And then you do that, and then you're doing what this verse says. You're dovetailing your propensity to analyze.
Deism, right?
I don't know.
That branch of Isaac Newton's like time period of science, I think they call it deism. At least
it rings a bell, but I haven't read about that in a while. Is that like the idea that
that's what I heard Sariputta was saying.
There's somebody who brought science and spirituality together. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
What else did you hear?
I really appreciate how you shared the supreme secret of spiritual life is contained in the heart of a devotee. And what a reminder of the importance of Sangha and like-minded Sangha, so that you also feel safe to be vulnerable enough to share the contents of your heart and then also to receive them.
It's right there. Before Rupa Goswami even starts talking about the holy name in his nectar of instruction. Nectar means it's the condensed instruction. So in 13 verses, I think the nectar of instruction is just 13 verses. He's condensed the whole philosophy and practice, most of the practice. So important is this Gohyam Akyati Prichati, revealing your heart and receiving your heart, that it comes before any discussion of the holy name.
Yeah. So to have, peers to do that with, and, pure devotees to do that with, and then also to hear from pure devotees, to hear from guru, right? And Diksha and Shiksha gurus, right? To really, like you were speaking about Mother Kanka, and just hearing what they experienced and their realizations and the ways that it affects my own heart, right? Opens my heart and allows me to actually receive more bhakti.
There's no substitute for maturity. There's no substitute for going through something. So there's something really powerful in hearing from somebody who's been through something, right? And it's also, I also find that really comforting when I'm going through something, because it's like, it's always something in this world. There's always these different challenges. We don't know what the way out is, except we know, okay, I got to keep chanting, keep going. But when I'm in the middle of something that seems irreconcilable, I don't have a solution. I sometimes find it helpful to think, there can come a time if I stick with this, where I can help somebody who's exactly where I am right now, because I will be on the other end by Krishna's mercy. I don't even know how, but Krishna will do that. He'll take me through this situation. And then I'll be able to express to them with conviction, you know what? I was exactly where you are right now. And it ends. You get to the other side. Mm-hmm. And that gives meaning to the struggle. It gives some value to the struggle, because there's always going to be other people who are struggling. And if you're willing to extend yourself and say, hey, listen, little Jiva, hang in there as the process works, right? Mm-hmm. Then you're a hero as far as Krishna is concerned. He loves you. No one's going to be more dear than him. No one ever will be. And you also get to make all those difficult challenges like valuable, not just for you, but for other people. So hearing from, they don't have to have a title, it doesn't have to be like a guru, just somebody who's sincere devotee, who's been through some things, is really, really powerful. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can I deepen?
Yeah,
on this
always.
Or try to. I personally have some challenges knowing when it's appropriate to reveal your heart, and I would like to hear what you have to say in light of two potential complications. One, disturbing the person whom you're revealing your heart to, potentially. And two, when revealing your heart in a society of devotees puts you into a position of vulnerability alongside, things like living situation, service, things like that.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the Sanskrit for something Rupa Goswami says in his Nectar of Devotion. He says one should seek out like-minded association that is more advanced than oneself, that is favorably inclined. And it's the context of taking shelter of Guru Padashraya, right? Adau Guru Padashraya, this idea that actually Bhakti begins, Adau, Adi. The beginning is actually taking shelter. It's long before initiation or anything else. It's like, where can I be vulnerable? So in that is a hint that we want to find somebody who's more advanced than ourselves, ideally. Although actually, as I pointed out, there's a great deal of value in peer association too. But there has to be a like-mindedness by which one can feel like I'm understood. I feel safe. They get me, And we can see we want to see that the other person is willing. They're favorably inclined, which means they have the time and energy to give. And when we see that, then we feel more motivated to show up and be vulnerable and be real. And I guess what I would say is that there may not be a lot of those relationships, but if there's even one, that's incredibly valuable, because it's kind of irreplaceable, right? One thing I always say to people who are presenting bhakti is, when you're trying to present bhakti to others in this world, basically everybody has authority issues. Everybody has a fear of being vulnerable, because everybody's been let down, right? So this speaks to your question, because you're not alone in like sitting in that vulnerable place of like, should I open up? Should I not open up? What will happen to me if I open up? So without getting into like specifics of you should open up in this situation and not that situation, because life is different for everybody. We all have that fear. And therefore, if you look outside, people who have no bhakti practice, they're very bottled up. They're very afraid. They have all kinds of masks on. They're pretending they're in control, pretending they're not feeling pain, they're pretending they're in charge, they're pretending they're the controller, they're pretending their trauma didn't happen, they're pretending they're not sad about their dad dying or this and that, whatever. They're just pretending. They haven't been honest about themselves. They're not even in sattva. Sattva means whatever happened, I'm real with it. I'm honest. They're in denial. Tamas. Or rajas, I'll fix it myself. Right? Sattva is like, no. I can sit with my grief. I can sit with my reality. I can sit with whatever's going on and be honest about it. And that's the culture we come from. So it's difficult to trust people. However, it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary to be even like a functional human being. What to speak of a devotee? You have to. You have to take a chance. So ideally, if you can find a place to do that that doesn't intersect with like, you know, my living situation, I'm gonna compromise my ability to live or have service by opening my heart. Ideally, there should be like I quoted Vimakati Princhati, Prabhupada translates it as revealing one's heart in confidence. That means that like, hey, can I tell you something? Can I be real with you? And you won't like, there won't be a consequence for me personally by doing that. Mm. And if it's like, yeah, go ahead, then they're holding confidence. It's like, if you say to them, hey, Prabhu, I gotta be honest with you. I know you're like running this ashram, but I gotta be honest. I'm struggling with this, that, and the other, right? And that might have implications for whether I can live here or not. But can I just please be real with you? You know, there's got to be that way in which they can hold space for you as a person to deal with you, because we need that. Actually, we need that. Yeah. So your question is ultimately, how do I trust people? Right? Seems like that's the essence of the question.
Yes, and also how. Actually, well, I wanted to expand on this because it's a complicated subject, and I'm personally a very trusting person, a very open person, to the point where sometimes I'll overshare. This is a complication of mine. And also I'm very active, engaged, and an available listener. So sometimes
you invite oversharing.
I'll invite oversharing, or I'll just happily listen to someone's complications, and then in response, in an attempt to relate, a sincere attempt to relate, I will maybe overshare about my own life. Yeah. And I luckily have my own home, and so like the part about living situation in the ashram is more just a relevant topic of interest of mine, because I think it's important to the devotion of Sangha.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to revealing the heart like that, like you're saying, I would say the fundamental thing people are looking for when they're sharing their experience is to be heard, is just be received. That's 80% of what people need. And the other 20% can involve advice, or Narada Muni, you know, telling his life story. But if you notice, Vyasadeva actually asked him. Vyasadeva is his disciple, and he says at the beginning of the 5th chapter, "You're so learned, and you can understand my faults. You can trace it out. Please help me." And then Narada Muni gets right into it. First thing he does, he chastises his disciple. You have not done your job properly. You know, that's not something you just do for anybody. But he knows the relationship. He knows there's love and trust here. He's been asked, so he doesn't waste any time. So it's not always on us to give advice or to share our story. The first thing we can do is just hear and help the other person to feel heard. Because 80% of the problem is that I feel I'm alone in my problem. And as soon as I can share my experience, and someone just like full eye contact, full open body position, not interrupting, just receiving, they do that, it does so much for the heart. And then when you've done that for some time, you can be like, reflecting back. So it sounds like it's like this for you, right? And then they reflect, actually, it's more like that. And you reflect until you get to a point that they feel heard and you feel like you've received them. Then you can say, would you like some advice, or can I share something? Would that be helpful for you? And see what they feel. Would they like to explore what your perspective is on their situation or not? And your service is to serve either way, because that's what you're there for. You're there for service. You're not there to be there. I'm not saying you're doing this, but we're not there to be anybody's guru or to teach them or to help them see the light. That's not what we're here for. We're here to serve. And if they're ready to hear from us about what our perspective offers their situation, then that's service. And if just holding space for them is enough, then that's service. Whatever serves the situation, right? So it's a tool. Personal reflection is a tool we can pull out of our toolbox. But generally, I would say we often overuse it. Some people give advice too often, or like just different things they'll tell you should do this, you should do that, or they'll moralize or use parables or warn or whatever. Those are all tools. But the first tool should always be just reception and hearing. And it comes to interpersonal relationships. That's the first thing you should start with, because people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care, right? Classic. So that's what it means to put that into practice. It's just receive them on their own terms. That's what people need. First of all, then they might receive advice. And then when there's love and trust, then they'll come to you like Narada Muni has Vyasa come to him and be like, please, you got to help me. I know you can help me. I know you can see my faults. What's the deal here? And then you can unload them. They're ready to receive everything. Vyasadeva was like fertile ground for any instruction. Please tell me. And Narada Muni can then, in 2 chapters, he gives everything, his whole heart, his whole life. Vyasadeva gets everything. Takes like 10 minutes to chant that chapter, right? So because he saw Vyasadeva was ready for it. So there's an art to seeing the receptivity of this person. What are they ready for? Right? Yeah.
So, in essence of what I heard, I want to see if this is correct, is that essentially people need to be heard, and just being heard is healing in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's asking permission, would you like me to just listen, or would you like my opinion, or my hear my experience? If they say yes, share your experience. If they say no, then you don't. Right. And then if they say no and you're left feeling like, wow, I actually want to share my experience, or this is bringing something up in me, it's important that then that person, that devotee, then has a space that they can also share.
Yeah.
And it may not be in that same exchange, but you may go find that may awaken something in you and realize, oh, I actually need someone to hold space for me, and it isn't this person.
Right.
So then you could go somewhere else for that. Is that?
That works.
Yeah.
It's 8:02.
Yeah.
And what do you like to do? Like to end exactly on time, go a little over? I don't want to ever keep anybody from their devotees from the prasad. If you want to have more reflections, I'm open to them. I'd love to hear what else stood out. Prabhu, Mataji, anything?
I just wanted to actually add one thing, which is that what I was hearing from you is that like the oversharing comes from this like really deep desire to connect.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, when you are able to reflect someone's story back to them without any interpretation, judgment, or misrepresentation, they feel more connected to you than if you were to like do an overshare with your own story. Because we come from this sort of like competitive place where, everybody's like, oh, you have the story live, this story.
Yeah.
Oh, you have this story live, this story. So we're kind of like used to always having our story overshadowed by someone else's story. And so when someone actually responds by saying, actually, all I did was listen, and I didn't even, I just like was this placid mirror, the connection that is formed can actually be deeper than when you share. So I just wanted to add that, like if you're having a drive to connect, that can actually be a very deep root.
Try it. It's really powerful. So much so that we took a Sattvic communication workshop hosted by devotees, and one of the items there was talking about what happens if 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million, somebody is experiencing suicidal thoughts, and it's very intense, right? Very, very serious thing, because that could lead to them actually taking their life. The first thing you should do is just hear them. Don't tell them like you have so much to live for. We would miss you. Don't tell them this, that, the other, because as soon as you do that, they feel that they're not understood in their grief or pain or whatever they're going through. Just hear them, sit with them. And that is hugely important, because then at least they're not alone, right? I hear you're feeling hopeless. I hear you're feeling like completely bereft of any option in life. Whatever they're saying, just reflect it back to them. Because that's what people need fundamentally, first of all. Then there may be some next steps, action items.
Also, sometimes in the reflection, what they came seeking, they find actually in just the reflection. They don't actually need your advice. They don't
Yeah.
actually someone once said it to me, like, my story sounds so different from a foot and a half away.
Mm.
You know, so it's
Right.
this fascinating thing where after they've said it and then they've heard it from someone else's lips, it gives them witness consciousness. So like you're actually doing the service of providing witness consciousness to them. So
Yeah.
it'd be really, really fascinating to actually take yourself out of it completely and see what happens. Thank you for that.
You think, Ruben?
I guess, I'm just, I feel, I really appreciate, I don't want to just, anyway, share this, it's just feelings, feel like, it's very appropriate that you're sharing on this verse and what you're sharing, because I definitely feel like that's the truth that I'm experiencing right now, just in listening to you. So, and yeah,
You're feeling nourished to listening to me.
yeah,
I'm grateful.
I mean, it's yeah. This importance that I put on just like receiving this in the right context, because this is, and now the second time that I'm hearing the first this chapter, and yeah, so I appreciate you helping me to see that it's not sentimental, that there's a different quality of depth to it that I guess I have a better you're helping me to experience what it is that I should be looking for in the rest when I'm reading the Bhagavatam. So yeah, I get a lot of helpful context from just your experience and your willingness to share that.
Thank you. I'm grateful that my presentation could be useful for you. That's the value of the reflection time.
Yeah.
Then I get to know that it did something. It landed. Yeah. When you're reading Bhagavatam, somebody who was it? I forget her name. She lives in Gita Nagari. Anyway, she great devotee. She expressed, because she could see that like I could appreciate the technicalities of Shastra and memorize verses and this and that, because I have that kind of mind. But she advised me, and it's really borne fruit. She said, when you're reading Bhagavatam, you're hearing it these pastimes, try to put yourself in the experience of the people who are having the pastimes.
Yeah, right.
Because it's like that's the difference between the Upanishadic, like impersonal study it's all theoretical. We're very practical. Devotees are very practical. Like, what did it feel like for Vyasadeva? What does it feel like for Narada Muni? What did it feel like for Prabhupada? Like these are powerful reflections. And that paradigm shift really hit for me. Because then it's not just like intellectual matter. I was able to sink into the experience of these devotees. And then all of a sudden, when I'm hearing about these things, like, oh, wow, like it has a relevance in my life. Because sometimes I don't know what's up. I need my guru to help me. Or sometimes like somebody I'm in the Narada Muni position, or, all these personal experiences are what it's all about.
That was exactly what I was talking about. That's what I was referring to. It's like, and especially with the Gita, reading the Gita and trying to picture that.
Oh God, Arjuna.
That
So
whole conversation and how that's coming out, and like that's the context and I got that from you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I could see that. That's very, very helpful.
Great. Yeah, I gave a class recently on the lamentation of Arjuna, and how that was a springboard for his personal realization, because he just like completely has a breakdown there and surrenders to Krishna on the basis of like facing tragedy and anticipatory grief, right? I'm going to grieve so hard that I'm like freaking out over here. And that's so relevant for everybody, because those moments can be real teachable moments. So it's like the Bhagavad Gita is a great example. There's so much there, such a personal expression. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavatam ki jai, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha, Krasnubhyascha, Patitana, Vaishnavi, Bhakti SF ki jai.
Jai.
Oh,
Haribo.
What's your name?
Shamya Pras.
Shamya Pratsky Jai.
Jai.
What's your name?